Hey guys, and welcome to the Huffington Post. I am Theodore Hoffman, and I am with an amazing lady, and I'm not going to introduce her. She's going to introduce herself. But the way that I met her is I went onto the BBC and I had an interview. And then afterwards we got speaking because the interview was about social media. We was talking about business, and she introduced me on her show, which is Financial Style. I highly recommend tuning in and also following our socials. But could you introduce yourself for us?
Yes, so my name's Merisha Stevenson.
Yeah.
You know me from the Financial Style
Yeah.
in the main, but I am a financial strategist by trade. So I like to talk about money. I like money a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so I also like to help other people sort out their money.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
So in recent years, I've been doing a lot on the wealth coaching side. And this year launched an investment program for beginners.
Amazing.
To teach people how to invest.
That's good. I think with the conversation I had this morning, we're definitely going to dive into some of that, and then you can plug that, because I think money is a topic that a lot of people don't like to talk about, but it needs to be talked about.
Well, unfortunately, everybody needs some of it.
Yeah, 100%. So, like, how did you get started in your business journey?
I suppose as a kid, my father's self-employed and always has been, apart from I think for 6 months of his life, where he did actually get a job and then worked out it wasn't a good idea. But anyway, so I think I've always been involved in business in some way. And then when I was younger, just kind of did what felt to me like a little bit of hustling, you know, ways to make extra money here and there. So that would be, you know, writing letters and doing CVs for my mom's friends. And, you know, when they wanted to complain to the council, I would write their letters up for them and charge them an admin fee.
Yeah.
And those days that was just for petrol money. You know, I was a teenager, that was my biggest concern. And then as time went by, I mean, I suppose I started in business, what I recognise as being in business, probably at about 19.
Okay.
But I'd been doing quite a lot of stuff in the run up to that. And I started up and then formally set up my first limited company, I think it was 20 something, maybe 22, maybe 24, I can't remember. It was one of them. But yeah, and really what it was about was I just always found making money, easy is the wrong word, but it always seemed like a relatively simple thing to me.
Yeah.
So it just made sense to do. And I was in jobs, and I would go into jobs and I would get bored really, really quickly and want to move on to something else. And the employment world didn't move fast enough for me.
Yeah.
So I just started carving my own path, really.
Okay, cool. And so, like, in that journey, obviously you had like a ton of problems that you had to face.
Oh God, yes.
And the reason why I asked this question is because on like social media, a lot of people like to put up their goals and stuff like that, which is great. But then a lot of people don't actually show what it actually takes to get there. So I like to just ask this question really is just like, what problems have you incurred on your journey and solved?
Oh, that for me, that's a huge question. Loads. Absolutely loads.
Could you give us one scenario?
I'll give you a couple.
Yeah,
maybe.
cool.
So partnerships.
Yeah.
So,
I hear you.
yeah, struggled with partnerships over the years. I've tended to find that it was always, there were times when it was very challenging to get the right type of partnership, or you would feel that it was never equal. So, you know, if there was two of you in it, one's giving 75%, the other one's giving 25%, everybody wants to collect 50-50 or what have you. So that's definitely been one challenge. And, you know, for a while, my solution was no partnerships. But then over time, I think what I came to realise was we select partners in business often the way we select friends. It's people we have things in common with and people who we like and people who we think, oh, do you know what, we can we can chill at the club, or we can do this, that and the other, and so maybe we can get on and have this business, particularly when you're both excited and enthusiastic about what you want to do. But actually you need to select business partners the way that you would select employees, not based on whether you like them or not, but based on what they bring and whether they have complementary skills to you or not. And if that's the case, and there's a lot of clarity about who's bringing what, it doesn't guarantee that it's going to be an equal partnership, but I think what it does is it gives people very clear roles. I think when everyone is able to do the same thing, it can be very easy for one person to go too far with that, someone else to not go far enough. And believe me, partnerships mash up friendships, mash up relationships, mash up family, mash up things.
Yeah, serious.
In a nutshell. So, you know, that was one journey I went on. And I think another one that was very poignant for me and probably put me in the space of actually looking at money, because when I started out in business, actually what I did was training and supporting small businesses. I stopped doing that. But part of the reason is because in business you can live a very feast-famine lifestyle. That's what I call it. So, you know, there are times when things are great and you're like, oh, this is fantastic, let's go for dinner. And then there's times when things are not so great and it's like, okay, maybe this is a beans on toast day. And I got sick of it. Like I really got to this, and particularly as I got older and you get more mature, like you get to the point where it's just no fun. So that made me try and learn a lot more about money in general and managing money and understanding, you know, this commodity that I kind of felt I spent so much energy trying to get out of people, and yet still, you know, didn't really understand it. And then as I sort of went on my own journey to kind of understand what that looked like, then I wanted to start taking other people with me. But definitely getting into a space of consistency and recognizing that consistency is better than this kind of up and down thing, because it messes with you mentally, physically, emotionally. It just messes with you on all levels. And you know what, as part of that, what I will say, if I throw in a small third, because like I said, this list is long, but if I throw in a small third, and it even makes me think about that being around here, I'm not going to name any names, but what I would say is not doing deals with the devil. And what I mean by that again is, sometimes for you have got a talent and your unbridled enthusiasm and you want to help people and you want to do what you do and do it well. And sometimes you will come across maybe slightly more seasoned people in the business world who will take advantage of that. And they will dangle carrots. You know, and I remember one company, you know, wanting me to commit a lot of time and energy and offering to pay myself and my then business partner, who at the time was also my life partner, but to pay me and my partner to I think we were offered £10,000 to effectively drop everything that we were doing and commit our time and energy to them, which we did and never got paid.
Stress.
Oh yeah, left us in a lot of problems. So, you know, again, when I say not doing deals with the devil, these days I'm very instinctive. If something doesn't feel right, I don't care what you're offering me, I'm not doing it.
Okay. Definitely, like, gut instinct is a very important part of actually going forward. Sometimes we do go against that gut instinct. I've had quite a few conversations now, and a lot of people say go with the gut instinct, but they've gone through so many things by not listening to their gut, and then they've regretted it.
Exactly.
Seriously.
Exactly. But then what I honestly will say is, learning to listen to your gut also takes a bit of time and takes a bit of experience. And like I say, when you're new into the business world in particular and you have that enthusiasm and you want to use those skills, you know, you very often will step into a situation thinking that you're going to be treated the way that you would treat somebody else, and it's just unfortunately the case. That's not always the case. So, you know, when something looks too good to be true, take the view that it probably is, you know, and if you are going to step into it, be extremely cautious. And if you feel like your gut is saying, I don't feel like this is a good idea, as you say, listen and trust yourself.
So when did you actually find value in yourself? So the reason why I asked this question is, like, there was a turning point when I got a specific amount of money, and I thought to myself, wow, I actually got paid the amount and above what I I asked for. And then that just brought a sensation to me that made me think, you know what, I am worth way that and more.
Yeah.
And then you get to another level. What type of situation have you felt that? When did you feel that?
I feel like I've probably gone through those scenarios quite a lot. Because for me, value and worth is not just attributed to money. So in terms of valuing my time, I mean, interestingly, that was a lesson that my father, as I say, who's always been in business, tried to really stamp into me like early. And I remember him at sort of 18, 19, you know, when I was 18, 19, looking at me and going, so how much is your time worth? And I was going, well, I'm getting paid £6.50 an hour. So, and he's like, no, that's not what I'm asking you. And it took a while for me to kind of get the point, but eventually I did. And so when I was starting out as a consultant, understanding what I understood about business and the experience and knowledge that I had, I mean, I was charging somewhere in the region of £100 to £150 an hour. So in that sense, I feel like generally over the years, I've had a good grasp. Sometimes I let my heart get in the way. So I've definitely had instances where, you know, somebody looks at me and says, oh, I haven't got that money. And you go, well, I just want to help you because you're such a lovely person. I want to see you do well. And so there's definitely been those instances where I have had an awareness of my worth, but not necessarily kind of followed it through or really stamped it home with whomever. And for me, that's not lack of awareness. I think that is just sometimes the decision that you make. It's not always the wisest decision, but it's the decision that you make. As I got older, though, I also learned to value my time a lot more, a lot more. So these days, I'm very ignorant with my time, I'm very defensive of how I use my time. I don't do meetings, very rarely. So, you know, there's a few people who may have found themselves slightly ignored, and it's not me coming from a disrespectful place. It's just my time's valuable. I'm very busy. I just don't have time to entertain it. And when people contact me and say things like, oh, can we have a meeting? 9 times out of 10, what that now means for the way my life is now is it means you want something from me that you're not telling me up front pretty much what it is. And so you're gonna take an hour of my time to go through all of that. And then at the end of it, you know, it's not always the case that my time is wasted, but a lot of the time my time is wasted.
And you end up giving that person way more value just for that whole
hour. Exactly. So I don't really do meetings. And I would rather people just cut to the chase, tell me what it is that they want. Or if there is going to be a meeting, for me, there has to be clarity about what it is. So, for example, when you asked me to speak to you today, you were very clear about what you wanted from that conversation. I'm good with that. When it's one of these kind of vague, let's have coffee, let's have lunch, no, we ain't got time. I have a rate card that matches my time, and if you want an hour of my time, you are more than welcome to pay for it.
100%, totally. So, like, I want to get into like the finance perspective because that's what you're about. I want to. What advice would you give to a young entrepreneur or an entrepreneur just in general to start doing when it comes to finance? Because when they start, well, when I started, I didn't even look at finances first thing. I was more like, you know what, let's get to the marketing, let's get to the sale, let's get to the bag. Where I feel like if I had an accountant or some type of complete financial direction when I very first started, I feel like I would have probably hit my goals a little bit more faster. And I would have put more worth on the time that I was doing the work. So so what advice would you give to an entrepreneur?
One of the most important words I think in finance is that people underestimate is budget and budgeting. I think you have to have a starting point, and believe me, again, I've made the same mistake. Where people can very easily undervalue themselves is they can be clear about what their services cost, and they can be clear about what they want to charge for things. But where they lack clarity is what's the cost of something, and that's not always easy to quantify. So you've got cost, you know, if you make a product, you'll ultimately know that you need materials to make that product, and when you've got that together, you've got your cost of sale, and then you can go on and sell it at a profit because you have clarity on your cost. I find a lot of service-based entrepreneurs don't understand their cost, or they underestimate it. So I would say one of the first things to really do is budget. Budget in the context of, before you even embark into I am self-employed and I'm doing this, and particularly if you're full-time self-employed, the question you want to ask yourself is, what do I need to live? What are my basic bills? What are my responsibilities? What do I need to do? If you have the luxury or privilege of, say, living at home or living with somebody else who is able to assist in supporting the household, then that's fine. One thing I say to couples or people who are in relationships is be open with your partner about what you're embarking on, because you might be going into business, but I promise you your entire household is impacted by what you do. Even if they never get involved, they're impacted. So it's always good to have a base budget, understand what your baseline is, what you need to do. And then once you have that budget in place, then you've got to ask yourself the question, can I afford to be self-employed? Now, what that might mean is, if you can't afford to do it full-time to start with, that you've got a job and it's your side hustle. There's no reason why you can't do your side hustle. And I mean, I've been in a situation where I remember once taking a job with a chap who mentored me, actually, and I had a really good relationship with, and I went through a down period in my business, and he said, listen, you're really good at sales, you know, come and work for me and bring some sales into my business for me. I was like, cool. And he was paying me reasonably, I'll put it like that. But you know, the sort of thing I wouldn't get out of bed for now, if I'm honest with you. But then, you know, because pride don't have no place in running businesses neither. You got to learn to step back from that when the time has come. So I always say to people, I've cleaned everything, including people, because when I need money, I need money. But saying that, he very kindly and graciously offered me a job. He saw I was struggling, and it's give me a chance to get back on my feet. And during that time I found a hustle, which actually later on became a business, and at the time it was training packages and literally giving away free training. But what the people who I was giving the training to didn't know was that every time I gave one of these free training packages away, I was earning, you know, 50 quid. So what I would do is, on my lunch break from my job, because I worked on an industrial estate at the time, or he was next door to an industrial estate, I would walk around the industrial estate signing up different companies to take on this business. Now, when it got to the stage where I was making more in my lunch hour than I was for the day's work I was doing for him, that's when I left. You know, because at that point I knew, okay, I've tipped the scale now. So now if I can do this in an hour, if I'm even dedicating 3 hours a day to this, you know, I can do something. And eventually I actually set up what was a very successful business for a while out of that basic model. But I tried it first. So I've spent a lot of time in my earlier career holding down jobs and doing my side hustle. So get into business when you can afford to, because one of the things I will say is, if you can't afford it, it's a distraction. The problem with being broke is it's distracting. It's like when your stomach rumbles, it distracts you. No matter what you're doing, it breaks your concentration, and that's the problem you have if you're struggling with money. And once you've got that in place, once you have a base budget, you understand what it is, you know what your minimums are, and you know then what your parameters are, then you just plan. And you know, it's a cliche where they say fail to plan, plan to fail, but it's true.
So how do you find a stable mindset through your entrepreneurship?
I actually think mindset is something you have to work on, and I think it's something you have to work on ongoing. Mindset is like peeling the layers of an onion off. You're actually never really okay. You're just better than you were before.
That's real talk.
Like, you know, and the thing is, when you first realise that, it's actually really frustrating. Like, you know, there were times, I've had days where you just go, I really don't want to be sensible today. I don't want to take the sensible decision. I don't want to be level-headed. I want to kick down somebody, cuss down the world, and put my, you know what I mean, make my point. And, you know, it doesn't really work that way. And the thing is, life always has a way of throwing you different challenges. And the reality of the matter is that business is only one journey. So, you know, as you mature, then what happens with that is lifestyle kicks in, family kick in, you know, whether it's children or the other half or what have you. And then even then, as time goes by, then you start finding that you've got to start thinking about looking after your parents, let's say, or all of these other things. So you're always going through a journey, and that's based on if everything goes to plan, when we know that most things don't.
Yeah, most things definitely don't.
Yeah, so, you know, I think mindset I've spent a lot of time working on. There was a point where I almost stopped, not exactly stopped what I was doing in business, but I got to a space of consistency and kind of knew that my business was ticking along and I didn't have to think that much about what I was doing, which does lead to stagnation, which is another story. But when I found that was the case, I really sort of stopped and took a lot of time to work on my mental. And one thing I will say that I think is important about that is getting to know yourself. I feel like, particularly this year with the pandemic and a lot of people struggling with being at home on their own and all this sort of thing, is because they don't really want to face themselves. And the problem is when you face yourself, you have to face a lot of truths and you have to face the imperfections, and there comes a point where you have to go through this journey with yourself and learn to forgive yourself and learn to be kind to yourself and bring it back full circle. And, you know, I committed at one stage to counselling and therapy, and I did it for 2 years. And every so often we'll pick up the phone, even now, to my counsellor and say, got to talk about some stuff, got to, you know, offload some things. And why? Because your mental state, I think, dictates so much more than we realise. I see a lot of, I mean, I'm a bit of a gym buff these days. Whether you can tell or not is a different story, but I am. And I see people in the gym and, you know, and they're going full throttle, and it's like, okay, that's great. But what you don't know is that if this isn't in check, it doesn't matter what you do with the rest of everything else. It just doesn't matter. So I think learning to get to the space of being kind to yourself, learning to love yourself, again, another cliche, but one that's really important. And learning to love yourself is one of those things that you're not doing until you really know that you're doing it. That's the only way I can put it. It's something that you have to be really intentional about. And, you know, I remember that over a period of time, and even in therapy and stuff, and I would hear that phrase, like, you know, you should love yourself. And I'd be thinking, but I do. What makes you think I don't? Like, I do. I'm good with me, you know? But what I realise is it's about the act of love to yourself. So it's not you thinking, I'm cool with me. It's maybe I am stretching myself too thinly and I'm going to take action to look after myself in that space. Or maybe I'm in a detrimental friendship or relationship or business partnership, and actually I'm going to take action to protect myself or to correct that situation. You know, it's about being intentional, and until you actually really get to the point of being intentional, you'll just think that people are throwing cliches at you and that they're taking the mick. But yeah, and every so often you got to press the reset button, you know.
I totally get you. 100%. Been there in terms of the mindset thing. What do you do in order to give yourself that self-love that you need? So I know that a lot of people do different things. Is it a daily practice, is it a weekly practice, or what is it that you do for yourself, whether that's sitting down, or is it that, I know that materialistic things aren't necessarily the right key, but they also uplift you, the way that you dress and stuff like that, to make you feel like you're stepping into that person. But what do you do? I
mean, what I will say on the materialistic side is this. You know, they always say, you know, money doesn't make you happy. I agree with that. It doesn't. It makes miserable a lot easier. You know, it does. Fact. You got time to wallow and be miserable when your bills are paid. You know, you don't when they're not. So it makes it easier.
That's so sweet. It's true. It's mad true.
But I think in terms of ways that I'm kind to myself, there's two factors to that for me. Number one, I listen to myself. I listen to myself. I listen to my body. I listen to my spirit. I listen. And I listen in the context of if something's not right, it's like, okay, I need to address it. So, for example, recently I've experienced a personal loss. I'm very clear about how I feel about that, but there are aspects of it that I don't understand and I'm not clear on. So in that instance, rather than in the past, what I would do is I would power through and go, well, suck it up, get on with it, life, this is the way that it is. There is a part of me now that is setting aside time to address it and to deal with it and to bring around me the support that I need. And if I don't know what that support looks like, being open enough to say, I don't know what that looks like. And I think what I would say is, outside of that, there are very practical things I do. So as I say, the gym thing for me, that for me is an act of self-love. And, I've been preaching to everyone recently that, weight is the least reason to go to the gym. Like, it's a nice little bonus when, you get that body snatched again and it's all good. But actually, there are so many other metaphysical benefits that moving your body gives you and strengthening your body gives you, that it's just worth it regardless. And I think more than anything, it's allowing yourself to be vulnerable without judgment. Most people struggle with vulnerability, and I was one of these people, because it was this perception of, oh, maybe it's weakness or this or that and the other. And actually what it is that's us judging ourselves before anybody else has even got there. And I think when you're able to step into a space of going, I'm not perfect and it's okay, then the way that you treat yourself changes. But what I will say is, I think discipline's important. I don't think telling yourself that anything you do is acceptable and everything you do is acceptable. Holding yourself to account is important. And in the moments when you're not able to hold yourself to account, have that friend or that family member that will do that for you, who will see through the BS and that, I don't want to do it today because of this excuse and that excuse and that excuse, and go, no, you're not going to thank yourself for this later. Get up and get it done, or get on and do what you got to do. So it's a balance.
Okay. So what would you tell your 20-year-old self?
Well, two things. I think the main thing I would say to myself then, knowing what I know now, is there really is no hurry.
Okay.
I think when we're younger, we have this concept of everything has to be now. Like, I was the most impatient person. Everything has to be now. As soon as I think of it, it must materialize. And don't get me wrong, sometimes that lack of patience has served me in a business setting. In some instances it has. But actually what it does is it creates stress, and it means that you put a lot more pressure on yourself that becomes counterproductive generally in achieving what you want to achieve. So I think what we don't appreciate at 20 is that you're not going to be the same person at 25, you're not going to be the same person at 30, you're not going to be the same person at 40, etc. And as a consequence of that, what you think is the answer to all of your problems at that point probably isn't. But it's okay. You actually don't have to rush the process. It is better that you climb that mountain one step at a time, and you consistently over 10, 15, 20 years reach the peak, than you jump, and then you end up having to spend 5 years standing still because you're exhausted.
Real talk. Not really seeing it from that perspective, to be fair, but it makes a lot of sense. Definitely. So what would you what traits do you think make up an entrepreneur? And I know there's loads of different things that you could say, but if you could pick 2 to 3.
I think tenacity. I think that's important. And the thing that keeps you going, that's what keeps you going regardless of everything else that's going on, because there's going to be other stuff that goes on. I'd say being self-motivated. There is nothing that anybody else can get you to do if deep down you don't want to do it. And I'm always really skeptical of people who come to me, whether business-wise or personally, and are very much like, oh yeah, I was gonna do that. and now that I know you, I'm gonna do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, I shouldn't be the anchor for that. If you
Yeah.
were gonna do it, you were gonna do it regardless, because
Mm-hmm.
anything that I'm gonna do is regardless of who's in the room.
Yeah, 100%.
So self-motivation, I think, is important. And then I think, actually, probably, I don't know if you'd expect me to say this one, but I would say authenticity.
1000%.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people lack the authenticity as soon as they get into business, see themselves as lesser than, and that everyone else is higher and better than. And I think people don't realise that their story of their life and them being a human being going through your experience is important, where in reality it's a massive, it makes you who you are, and from a story perspective, people will definitely walk away from this and realise, you know what, that's powerful, I'm actually going through that right now and I could potentially make that change. Hence the reason why of the show. But I think just in general, we all have our own, people love people, people buy from people. So I think authenticity is just, I think it is very overlooked, and I think over the podcasts, people have actually listened to themselves back and said, that's actually really good and it's real. And actually shocked about themselves, where they should be talking more about that, and that's why people buy into them. That's genuinely the main thing. So where do you see yourself in like 5 years time?
Before I answer that,
Yeah.
I just want to address something you've just said, because I think you're right, but I think here's what I would say. And from a compassion standpoint, I would say this: in order to be authentic, you actually have to know who you are and understand the value of your journey. And it is easy, again, particularly I think when you're earlier in that journey, to not know that.
Yeah.
And so, to an extent, the ability for somebody else to know you is only to the extent to which you know yourself.
Yeah.
And that's true in all areas of life. So I do find with some people, and maybe why I'm not so hard on some people in that instance, is that lack of authenticity isn't based on them not wanting to be authentic. It's based more on them not knowing how.
Yeah.
And that's why, even though I wouldn't call it a skill, I do think maybe a value to consider when you're embarking on entrepreneurship is understanding yourself. When you get to the point when you know your strengths, your weaknesses, you know what you can bash out without thinking, and you know the things that are going to be your stumbling block, you can actually put a structure and a frame around you, whether that is people, processes, or things that then catch you when you fall. But a lot of people don't know that about themselves when they haven't embarked on the journey.
Yeah.
So what I will say is I do see delusions of grandeur in a lot of places. But if I'm honest, I look at those people and I think, oh, you don't know yourself yet. And one day you will. And for that reason, I, again, will be quite honest, you know, using money as an example, and I'll answer your question about 5 years' time, but using money as an example, people are, I've been in this money game for 14 years, 14, 15 years easily. And there was a time when I couldn't get people to talk about money. All I could just about do is get them to listen. Now everybody wants to talk about money. And part of the reason is because, a little bit like food, it's like if I came to you and said, so let me go see what's in your fridge, because that's going to tell me the kind of person that you are. And you suddenly start thinking about the chocolate cake that's tucked behind the back of the orange juice and start thinking, I'm going to get judged. That's how people are with money. Like, it's an intensely personal thing, and it exposes you. And you have to be willing to see yourself before you're even willing to show that to anybody else. And the only thing that brings you there outside of self-awareness is desperation. It's the only other thing that brings you there. Sometimes people learn who they are because desperation and problems kicked in and they had to figure it out, whether they wanted to or not. So my point in all of that is that I would just say, don't be too hard on people who don't yet know that about themselves, because it is a journey. But what I don't do is I just don't follow those people. Because they will walk themselves and you off the edge of a cliff without either of you realising it. And then you get angry with them. You don't have to get angry with them if they didn't do you nothing. You can just go, oh, never mind, you'll learn, and keep it moving.
I'm so glad that you actually brought that up, because there's been so many times that I've like said, like, you have this skill, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this, but I'm like talking, and there's no action, and it's just because I've found and understood my value, and over time I check in with myself and I would tick off and XYZ, okay, this is what I've done, this is what I've done. I kind of like expect other people to be able to see that, but it takes time for you to go there, look back and be like, well, okay, I've actually grown through that space. So yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because probably a lot of people are feeling the same way. I've felt the same way, or it's just reminding people now, if they're starting later on down the line, make sure you review your progress.
Yeah, and as you say, check in with yourself and know that it's okay. Like, you're on your own journey, your own trajectory. What it looks like for you is what it looks like for you. Do you know what I mean? My mum used to come out with all of these sayings, and it, you know, it used to be, what's good for the, I don't know, the cockerel isn't good for the chicken. That kind of thing. Yeah. And at the time, you're like, okay. Yeah. But over time, you're kind of like, we all have to have our own sort of journey through stuff. And the thing is, you never know where it's going to quite plop you out. So I think I've just learned, in a way, as ignorant as I can be on one hand, to have a level of compassion on another that says, you know what, you're not there till you're there. Yeah. And sometimes all you need to do is plant the seed. The number of times over the years I've just planted the seed, and I know that person will come back when they're ready, and they do. But anyway, to answer your question, where will we be in 5 years' time? Yeah. Where will I be in 5 years' time? Planning my retirement. Okay. To be fair, I don't want to retire old, because I don't want to be old when I retire. No, I don't know how else to put it. Yeah, like, I still want to enjoy life. Like, the stuff that I want to do that I'm not going to be able to do in like an old, body. Yeah. So I would say planning my retirement, and I'm actually starting to think a lot about that now, and starting to think about how I lay the foundation, because my journey has been unpredictable, in the sense of it's not been the straight, I'm employed, I have a standard pension, and when I, if I choose to quit at 65 or 70 or however old now they want you to live to, work to the point where you basically keel over, then then I'll be on my £118 a week. Like, I'm not living that life, to be honest. So for that reason, I'm starting to think about how I retire early, how I still do it with a quality of life, and in a way where I can enjoy the family life that I've probably been putting off for a long time, because I've been this quintessential career girl. Okay, cool. I would love for the audience, the viewers and the listeners, to tune into you. I want you to, you've got airtime to plug yourself, or your socials, anything that you've got coming up. Here's your time. Okay, so yes, as you say, I do financial style. So I'm on the radio every Saturday morning between 10 and noon, on New Style Radio 98.7 FM, and also you can pick that up online anywhere, through various channels. Just look for New Style Radio online, and on social media I'm Financial Style, so you can pick me up on Instagram. That's the best place to follow me, really. But I'm also on Facebook and Twitter. You'll also pick me up under my own name. So to view my website, MerishaStevenson.com, it's a lot easier to just stick it all under one banner. I am scheduling a new investment program. So the point of my investment program is this: I don't tell you what to invest in. What I help you to do is understand how to make investment decisions. So it's an 8-week program. It's an hour a week over 8 weeks, a maximum of 8 people in a group, so that I can spend time with each of you individually. And what you do is you will go through different key types of investment: stock market, property, cryptocurrency, forex trading, all that sort of stuff, to understand what type of investment would work for you based on the amount of money you have. Believe me, you can start with like 20 quid. People just don't know this. And how then you can build an investment portfolio. So the aim is to arm you with knowledge, so that what everybody who does my program, everybody have a 100% success rate with this. Everybody is investing actively by the end of that program, and in fact normally by about halfway through. Cool. So if you want to get on the next one, then I would say tune into my website, MerishaStevenson.com. You'll find the details on there.
Okay, amazing. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
No problem.
And well done.
Oh, thank you very much. Viewers, listeners, I would love for you to like this video. I would love for you to actually comment on there any type of questions that you have for myself or for Merisha Stevenson, and we'll get back to you 100%. And also to share this with a friend, an entrepreneur, someone that's actually thinking about starting business or actually in business and probably struggling and needs some advice on business, on finance, or that you just feel like they'll be able to take away some great information from this video. I want to say thank you very much for watching and listening, and take care, and I'll see you on the next show.